So the order, the September 29th meeting of the Milton School Building Committee. It's 11:05 a.m. And then I'll just go through and do a roll call roster for attendance. Mike Zulis.
Here.
And yep, Mark Loring.
Here.
Tim Lombard.
Here.
And Glenn Hoffman.
Here.
And Sean O'Rourke here. All right. So the second thing on the agenda that we have is discussion, possible vote for a funding article. So it is, most of you are aware, or all of you are aware. We've been discussing potential additional funding for the school building committee, essentially for our past 3 to 4 meetings. And I know it's kind of taken deeper dive over the last couple meetings from our past day. I had some work to do to go out and look at what the overall potential cost of the feasibility study would be. And then additionally, see if I could dig to find additional information on the duration or the schedule of that. So that way we could look at what that overall cost would be over that duration and figure out what the burn rate would be. And then once we figured out what that burn rate would be, compare it to what we have for available funding. And then, so I sent all the information out yesterday, mainly for everybody. So the rough numbers, and I can pull everything up if people want to walk through them and do that.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think that's important, Sean, if you want to just pull it up and walk through. I think that's
Yep, definitely. Let me share my screen. So start back here. So at the Mass School Building Authority, they provide tons of information for cost data, historical and current. And so when you come down here for designer and OPM fees at schematic design, you can click on a middle school, which is what we're looking to do. And then as it pulls that up, it basically opens up into this very large spreadsheet that runs through all the historical or current projects that are out there. So what I did is it downloaded this PDF file, converted it to an Excel file so we can not manipulate it, but just see the data a little bit easier. And then as I went through there, 3 schools kind of popped out. The 3 schools that we're looking at that have similar enrollment programs, and then obviously into square footage, similar square footage, were essentially Chelsea, Situate, and look at those, the numbers for those. They do break the services down. So for designer services or architectural services that we look at, the range was 472,000 to roughly 700,000. And when we averaged those out, the average was 589,000 for just the cost for an architect to perform the feasibility study.
Sean, I got a price around $720 for that service, so it's right in kind of in line with what you're seeing here. And the guy I got the cost from doesn't work for a school firm anymore. He works for Shepley Bullfinch, who typically do more private type work. So that would explain the elevated number, I think. So that $600,000 is. I tried to get it down where we were talking, and I just don't see it happening. I think that's pretty accurate.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, the other parts of this too is the 2 numbers for, go back up, and accepted into the MSBA program in 2014. The Braintree one was accepted in 2019, which is basically the most current program that we're having. So that 700,000 that you're listing there is kind of in line for what we have, what we're looking at. The other one is you go down further into that, it gets into owner's project manager, and they break down the owner's project manager costs very similarly for the feasibility study. And those varied from 330,000 down to 150, back up to 300,000. So roughly 263,000. So, it's hard with the Zoom. What I did is I took those kind of average costs that were there, and for my end, the work we've already done up to this point of a site, identifying a program. So what I did is I've taken those average costs and said, you know, give it a 25% discount for the work that we've done. And it's going to take a second. I just want to make sure nobody else is in the waiting room. No. So with that, you know, taking those average costs and discounting them for essentially the work that we've done so far, for an architectural services that we need, my guess on the budget or my estimate on the budget is about $441,000. When you go down to the owner's project manager, sorry about that. Email has a mind of its own. You go down to the owner's project manager using that same kind of 25% discount, we're roughly about $200,000. So when I add both those up for an engineer and architect, an OPM and an architect fee, about $639,000 for what's going on there. Our current funding that we've confirmed for school building committee in the town is a little over $281,000. So our short overall for that is about $358,000. The $358,000 that, you know, is the estimate that we're short. We also have additional work that we have to have done potentially for surveying of some of the Article 97 land that's over on Randolph Ave. So we're estimating that at roughly $25,000. I've got BSC Group working on a proposal for that now. And then similarly, the appraisals, which we've got the proposals for those coming in today. My hope is they're below $25,000. But in short, when you take the $350,000 roughly that we're short, the additional work for the other, we're all short on the project is about $408,000. So that's, for me, where I've come up with, you know, what I think our ask should be of the town. Now, the other part that comes in too is when we look at this OPM fee at $639,000, with our current funding at $281,000. Once we take out the $25,000 for survey and the $25,000 for appraisals, we're down to about $231,000. The duration for the preliminary design and schematic design was about 244 days. And when you apply that same, call it 25% discount or shorten that duration by 25%, you're at about 183 days, which is about 6 months. So the burn, if we were just to go, you know, to go without this funding and forego a request at town, we would essentially hire them on. They would be burning, you know, based on these numbers, about $100,000 a month. And for us, that basically takes us down really quick to about 2.2 months of service that we would get them. So if they were to come on, if we were to onboard both of them, and, you know, we're onboarding the OPM hopefully next or in early November, and then we bring on an architect, you know, we're only going to have roughly about 2 months worth of work for them to do. And if we onboard an architect at the end of January, beginning of February, that would be February, March, and then essentially we stop because we're out of money. So that's kind of an overall view of, you know, the work since Monday night to kind of really dig into the numbers, dig into the durations, schedules that we're looking at for some of the stuff, and, you know, come up with what I think is an ask for supplementing that would allow us to start in January, February, and then essentially be done 6 months later, which would be roughly end of July. And then, you know, with that, at that time, we'd have a feasibility study much more detailed than what we have now. And correspondingly, it would allow us to get a much better refined construction number at that time for the overall project cost too. So, you know, with that, I'll open it up for anybody's questions, comments, or anything. So
I'm concerned that some of the, I guess both the OPM and architect could come back and say, that's great, you did all this work, that's 25% of our work, but we're going to have to recreate some portion of that. I would be more comfortable being prepared to pay 100% of those costs and still work toward actually paying 75% of those costs. I just don't know, you know, the challenge in funding any more than 400,000 at the town meeting.
So essentially, if we increase those costs to what the
544,000, yeah.
Yeah, the ask would be 544,000.
Correct.
So so have you taken a chance, Tim, to look through the PDF I sent for Module 3 for MSBA for what's described under that feasibility study for what the services we'd be asking them to do? Because what I like, because basically what you're saying there is some of your basis for that is they're going to have to recreate a lot of this, right?
Yeah.
The work they'd be doing under their, for example, site selection, we would tell them there is no site selection. We have a site. This is one,
right.
You know, based on where we're at. The space needs study. So they asked, there's also a need to do a space needs study under there. We're going to hand over the 2019 DRA space needs study that we've already done. So, you know, for me, I think we'd actually, my guess is I think we would be more of a discount than 25%. So I'm comfortable with the 25% as like a number. Yeah, no, you know what I mean, because there's certain portions as you read through that Module 3 stuff of how these numbers are broken out, that it's there. But I'm open for discussion on that too. If we want to see if we can increase the number too. I want to make sure that you know we don't ask for too much specifically for some of the discussion that's gone on already, because we haven't expended any of that 275,000 that were already been allocated. Mike.
Yeah, I just to elaborate on that, I think for the 5 years of this committee, we've been pretty penurious about how we've gone about things, and we've been very tight with the money, and I think that's been appreciated by town meeting. And I think this analysis provides a persuasive case for the need in the short term without seeking too much. And so when we ultimately we're going to need more money to build a school, and so I think this establishes and continues the credibility that we've had in terms of the use of the funding and only asking for what we need for a period of time. This gets us at least to the annual town meeting without having to stop. And I think that's really what the issue here is. We'd have to stop, and we would lose at a minimum 3 or 4 months, which we can't do at this point. And then the other piece of this is my understanding is if we get school building authority money in December, that changes the whole game, and we won't necessarily need this fund. We won't necessarily need this funding, and so that's another piece of this as well. So you know, I think I don't know if we discussed. We had this discussion earlier this week about this is really being an insurance policy. If we don't get school building authority funding, this allows the work to continue. If we do get school building authority money, again, we don't need it. We could even revert it back if we don't need it, right? Because all the funding changes. But if we don't get it, this allows us not to lose 3 or 4 months of work, at least until the annual town meeting or beyond. So I think it's a good analysis. I think it's persuasive. I think it's and I think it goes along with the way we've been doing things in the last 5 years, which is being really tight with the taxpayer funds.
Yep. And Tim, thank you for raising your hand.
Sorry, Mike had me at penurious.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. Mark.
Sorry. Yeah. I think Mike's statement is persuasive. I think this analysis that you put together, Sean, is fantastic. So really appreciate it. This is very helpful to just walk through the numbers and see the calculations and kind of see what gets us there. I totally agree. Like the goal of this is to make sure we don't have to stop and we can get as far as possible and make sure that the lack of finances don't greatly hold us up. You know, Tim's statement, somewhat resonates with me too. I certainly don't want to undershoot it and then us stop, but I do think kind of the worst case scenario here is if we undershoot it, you know, instead of now losing, to Mike's point, right, 3 or 4 months, we're now losing maybe, you know, half a month or a month. Like should at least be enough money from my assessment of this, and obviously the assessment you did, to get us pretty darn close to town meeting. And maybe we're, you know, spending the last couple pennies before that meeting happens. But I think it's a elegant balance between those two priorities.
Yeah, and the key point that I had forgot to mention is, you know, all of this is based on us entering the MSBA program. So, you know, if we decide to enter the MSBA program and then essentially enter into module 1, module 2, this is essentially module 3. I think that initial funding of 275 would be able to carry us through those initial first couple modules, and we could revert, you know, town meeting could, you know, there could be some reallocation article in May that would reappropriate this money too. So, you know, in my end, as I've looked at this again, you know, as Mike said, it's like an insurance policy for us that if we're not accepted or don't enter into MSBA's program, it then allows us to just, you know, keep going with this project. Here is, hang on 1 second, Mike. Carrie's here. Pull Carrie, keep it up. I'm just gonna stop sharing just for a second so I can put Carrie to share her screen when she jumps in. Put her screen up, so just give it a second, Mike, and I'll recognize you. Hey, Carrie. Hey, Carrie, how are you? Audio working? Yeah, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, all good. Good.
Really need to hear me generally.
No, that's fine. Just a quick catch up. So we just kind of went through data that I sent members for, you know, basis for the funding of, you know, the previous estimates that were done for other schools, the discounting that we did to that, the shortfall that, you know, we have with our existing funding. And if we were to proceed with our existing funding, you know, we'd only have about 2 months worth of available work that we could fund an OPM and architect. So we're just kind of in, you know, general discussion at this point right now. So, right, Mike.
Thanks, Sean. So the other thing to mention is that this article is this proposed article is premised on getting the funding from certified free cash. Now, we certainly hope to have certified free cash before the December town meeting. We've had it in the past. We didn't have it last year, the last couple of years. There were delays and free cash wasn't certified until much later in the process. So I suppose there's a chance that we might not have certified free cash by December, but this is premised on the fact that that kind of one-time funding, and we don't know what the amount will be, right? From the Department of Revenue. So this article is premised on the fact that we do have this this amount of one-time money that's coming back to the town that hasn't been allocated yet. So and again, we may know it next week, right? It may be certified next week, but it's hard to predict with the Department of Revenue.
Just taking it. Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, just a question, Mike. Is there any way to frame the article So again, let's say there's a scenario where certified free cash is not certified by town meeting. Is there any way to say, to frame the article where if the state certifies it January 10th, at that point, the money is now available to the SBC, or not really, because we wouldn't know the amount, and there might be other things that are also looking for part of the certified free cash pot?
Yeah, I think the answer, Mark, is you can't appropriate money that you don't have. And so if the money is not available, is not certified as of December, then we couldn't appropriate it. You can't do like a future appropriation. So in that case, if we were to go, if we wanted to do this, we'd have to have a town meeting in January or February in order to do it. Now there is already an article that the select board has put on the warrant for $350,000 to additional money that has come up for this fiscal year, because our investment income, our interest income, is a lot higher than we anticipated because of interest rates, and that's in the amount of about $350,000. And so right now the recommendation of the town administrator is for that to go into the reserve fund. And part of it is, I think the recommendation is to pay for a wood chipper, which is about $100,000 because our wood chipper broke. So, so that's right now the only other alternative funding that I'm aware of for the December town meeting, is that $350,000. And right now that's what the recommendation has been from the town administrator. So.
So working currently, I've updated the proposed article and just share that so we can see it to.
Just to add, the article doesn't say it should come out of free cash. That's just the recommendation. So the money could
Correct.
come, if the money is available in some other way, then presumably that we could. I'm just not aware of that kind of money that's going to fall from the sky between now and December.
Is that just left up to the town administrator to, if there was other cash flow? Like how is that determined if we don't need to say it specifically within the article?
It's town meeting. Town meeting is the appropriating body. So, we can make recommendations. He can make recommendations. Select board can make recommendations. Anyone can make recommendations. Warrant committee can make recommendations. But town meeting is the appropriating authority.
Got you. But then do we need to state ultimately at some point within the article that it's free cash, but we're just leaving it blank for now?
No, not in the article,
Okay.
Because the article just says, you'll see at the bottom, it's borrowing, transfer, fail. The article leaves it open. And that's what, but then the recommendation that we're proposing, if you scroll down, Sean, the recommendation that we're proposing is that money come out of certified free cash. But that can be changed, although there are some limitations on town meeting, depending on what's printed in the warrant ultimately. But those limitations are more arcane than we need to go into here. And we'll know well before the warrant is printed whether that free cash is available.
So just to talk through again, potential situations, if free cash is not certified, or free cash is certified and comes in less than expected, and there's not funds for this, we potentially could change the recommended language if the committee wanted to say something like, ask for debt, and then it would then go in front of the town meeting as like a debt request, which would obviously then require a 2/3 vote. But that's something that could be changed later on after we, as we get closer.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
So essentially, with the article, we last year we essentially had last year's article 33 at the annual town meeting, and we expanded upon that a little more. I know there were some questions that came up before that we had town council look at, and at least for appraisal services, the professional services. So what we did in this article is just expand on that a little bit more. And then essentially with this, you know, the recommendation below basically lists out, you know, very similar to what we were doing before, just with an updated number of 400,000. Let me scroll down a little too, just so everybody can do my best. There you go. And these also have, as you note in there too, the appropriations are contingent on us entering the school building authority program too. So that's in the article, and it's also in the recommendation. So it's the town meeting too, that, you know, these appropriations are based on us entering the MSBA program.
So actually, maybe I have an earlier draft. So let me look at that language, because I didn't have that. To see the town. Oh, to say contingent on. Okay, so I think the language should say it would be contingent on, just to be clear, the town not being selected
Yes.
for participation. Right?
Yeah, so
I agree with that.
well, one of the things on there is, you know, for the MSBA, potentially as we hire an OPM, we're going to be asking them to do a financial analysis with us working with MSBA and not with MSBA, right? But we could get accepted to MSBA, but it may be more advantageous financially to go it on our own. And that's one of the first things we're asking an OPM to do. If it comes out that it's more advantageous to forego the MSBA funding because it would save money and time, I don't think we would want to, you know, have this money back reallocated. We want to still proceed down the path that we're doing. So it becomes a little tricky at that point for some of this stuff.
I agree. And I think there's a high likelihood that that's what the analysis would show.
So I think though, Sean, if you just say contingent on the towns not participating, then it's not a decision of the MSBA, it's the town's decision.
Yep.
I just wanted to be clear, right? Because right now it seems if the vote is contingent on, it seems like the money is contingent on our participating rather than our not participating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with Mike. It reads as if we only get the money if we participate in the MSBA process versus we get the money if we don't participate in the MSBA process.
So basically,
not participating, and this is basically this is basically the reverter clause, for lack of a better term, right? We're saying, hey, if we're participating, then if we're participating in the MSBA, then we're not going to take the money.
Yeah. So one of the other things is, you know, when the motion made to approve, one of my friendly amendments I'm going to ask is, you know, the approval of this is subject to review by town council and minor edits to do that stuff also. So, you know, for you know, what we're looking at here essentially is the overall substance of what we're asking, and then the refinement of that for the legalities of that stuff are going to be done by town council before it's presented to the select board.
Would that just be part of the motion we end up making, is motion to approve, providing the chair of the school building committee in consultation? Okay.
Yeah, I think you might the motion will be to approve the article substantially in this form, something like that.
Yeah.
And then with what you said, Mark. So now at the bottom, Sean, you're gonna want to change that proviso. To say something like, if the town of Milton does not participate, if the no funds, if the town of Milton participates in.
Yeah, no funds should be expended. Yep. Yeah, I think it should be, no funds shall be expended if the town chooses to participate in the Mass School Building Authority program. Oh, I guess you do say if the MSBA invites the town and the
Oh,
town
and.
enters this MSBA program, so that
That's
covers
true.
that. So it's
It
just a
does,
matter of
yes.
swapping the negation.
Yep.
Yep.
All right.
Great. Thank you for putting this together, Sean.
Yep, no problem. So I think I think at this point, if if everyone's comfortable with the request, the proposed article, the next step is essentially making a motion to approve it as we discussed, and then essentially going to a vote. That's basically the remainder of the agenda.
I can make a motion unless anybody else has other things they want to talk about first, but hearing nobody jumping in, I'll make a motion that we approve the SBC December 2023 warrant article with the previously discussed edits as seen here, while also allowing the SBC chair in consultation with legal counsel to make any additional minor, I don't know, procedural edits to the language. It was very wordy. I'm not. I'm sorry.
I'll
No,
second that,
that's
Sean.
fine. That's all right. 1 second. Any further discussion? All right. Seeing none, we'll just go to a roll call vote. Go by Zoom as they see. I apologize. Mike Zullis, you typically last by alphabetical order.
I know, this is a bonus, yes.
Mark Loring,
Yes.
Tim Lombard,
Yes.
Glenn Hoffman,
Yes.
Carrie Hurley,
Yes.
and Sean O'Rourke. Yes. Okay. So yeah, I think with that, so I'll work with town council, get these final edits done, non-substantive, and we'll get that up into the select board for Mike. When's your next meeting, Mike?
It's the 10th, unless we add one, so I would send it to the town administrator as soon as possible, even in this form, just so he has it and he's aware of it, and so yeah, I would just send it to him as soon as possible, and if you need to tweak it, based on what town council says, that'll be fine, but I'd get it on his radar, just make sure that he's aware of it.
I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do that immediately after this call. So our last thing on the agenda is our favorite thing, adjournment. So look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Carrie Hurley. So similar roll call vote. Mike Zullis,
Yes.
Mark Loring,
Yes.
Tim Lombard,
Yes.
Glenn Hoffman,
Yes.
and Carrie Hurley,
Yes.
and Sean O'Rourke. Yes. All right. Thank you all very much. Have a good weekend, and together week from this Monday.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Sean.
A little bit further out due to the holiday. Sorry about that, but yeah,
Yeah.
thank you guys
Sean,
very
thanks.
much.
Thanks
Have
for
a-
all your work.
Thank you.
I guess.